"Excuse me, sweetheart. This lane is not for you. Economy check-in is at the far end. Don't make me call security." The words didn't come out as a whisper. They didn't come out as a warning. They came out the way a person speaks when they have never once been questioned, loud, certain, and completely unbothered by who was listening. Claudia Farrell stood behind the gate podium at LAX Terminal 4 Gate 7, looking like someone had dropped a fashion editor into an airline uniform. Her platinum blonde hair was pinned back in a flawless chignon, not a single strand daring to move out of place. Her lips were painted a deep, saturated red, the kind of red that announces itself before the woman wearing it even opens her mouth. Her Crestline Air uniform fit like it had been tailored specifically for her body, the blazer nipped at the waist, the pencil skirt ending just above the knee, the heels a solid 3 inches and perfectly steady on the hard airport floor. Every movement she made was deliberate. Every glance was measured. Claudia Farrell was a woman who understood that appearance was power, and she had been wielding both for 14 years. The girl standing in front of her was 23 years old. Her name was Zara Okafor. Zara wore an oversized black hoodie, the kind with no logo and no particular story. Her jogger pants were gray, slightly worn at the knees. Her sneakers were white, or they used to be. Her hair was pulled back in a loose twist, a few coils escaping around her temples. She carried no designer bag, no visible jewelry, no signal of anything that the world typically uses to decide whether someone belongs somewhere. Just a battered canvas backpack on one shoulder and a phone in her hand, the screen displaying a boarding pass for Seat 1, a Flight 304 to Chicago Group 1 First Class, Crestline Air. She had just flown in from London on a red-eye. Before that, she had spent 5 days finishing her final exams at Wharton. Before that, she had spent 3 weeks barely sleeping. Her eyes were calm, but they were the calm of someone who had been tired for a very long time and had decided to stop showing it. She stepped up to the priority lane podium. She held out her phone. Claudia did not look at the screen. She looked at the sneakers, then the backpack, then, slowly, the hoodie. And finally she looked at Zara's face with the expression of a person who had already reached a conclusion before any evidence was presented. She said it again the same way she said it the first time. No louder, no softer, just equally sure. "Excuse me. Economy is at the far end." Zara did not raise her voice. She did not step back. She simply kept the phone extended, the boarding pass clearly visible. Seat 1A glowing on the screen. "I'm in first class," Zara said. "Seat 1A. Claudia tilted her head slightly to the right, the practiced tilt of someone performing patience for an audience. Behind her, young gate agent Todd Reyes, 26 years old, 2 months into the job, instinctively reached a hand toward the scanner on the desk. It was automatic. Someone has a ticket, you scan the ticket. That was the job. Claudia stopped him with a single look. Todd's hand froze in the air for a moment, then quietly returned to his side. From across the gate area, a young woman named Isabel Vargas had already noticed something was wrong. She was 27, a travel blogger with just under 800,000 followers waiting to board the same flight. She had seen the exchange happen. She had seen the phone extended, the boarding pass visible, and the gate agent not look at it. She pulled out her own phone, not dramatically, not with announcement, and pressed record. She didn't say anything. She just pointed her camera at the podium and waited. At Gate 7 on the other side of Terminal 4 at LAX, the morning crowd moved with the usual chaos of delayed connections and rolling luggage. But right there at the podium, something had already gone very wrong. And the woman with the platinum hair and the steady heels had no idea what was about to arrive. What Claudia Farrell did not know, what none of them knew, was that in exactly 11 minutes, the man who now owned this airline would be on the phone. And his first order of business would be her name. Zara kept the phone steady. Claudia did not reach for the scanner. Instead, she placed both hands flat on the podium counter and leaned forward slightly, the way a teacher leans toward a student who has said something incorrect in front of the class. "I don't need to scan anything to know you're in the wrong lane, honey." The word honey landed in the air like a stone dropped in still water. Around the podium, a few passengers in the general boarding queue glanced up. One woman near the front of the economy line shifted her weight and looked away quickly the way people do when they sense something ugly happening and aren't sure whether to acknowledge it. Todd Reyes looked at the phone again. He could read the boarding pass from where he stood. Seat 1A, Group 1. The logo was correct. The confirmation number was formatted right. He had processed hundreds of these. He knew what a legitimate first-class ticket looked like. He opened his mouth. Claudia spoke before he could. "Todd, I've got this." Her tone made the words sound polite. Her eyes said something else entirely. Todd closed his mouth. Zara lowered her phone slightly but did not step back. She had been in this exact kind of moment before, not at this airport, not with this woman, but in rooms and lines and spaces where someone had looked at her and decided the answer before the question was asked. She knew what it felt like. She also knew that raising her voice would only give Claudia what she wanted a reason to call security, and a story that started with the passenger was being disruptive. So she stood her ground. Quietly, which was somehow more powerful than anything she could have shouted. A man in a sharp navy suit moved up beside her from the general crowd behind the priority rope. He walked with the ease of someone who had never once been told to wait. He did not look at Zara. He placed his travel wallet on the counter and spoke as if the space at the front of the line had always been his. "Claudia, the name is Donnelly. Richard Donnelly. Just need to confirm my upgrade went through." Claudia's entire demeanor changed in under 2 seconds. The slight tension around her jaw disappeared. The angle of her shoulders softened. Her lips, which had been set in that particular straight line of authority, curved into a warm, practiced smile. "Mr. Donnelly, of course. Let me pull that right up for you." She took his travel wallet without a moment's pause. Her fingers moved across the keyboard. She did not check his ID. She did not ask him to confirm his name or his booking. She simply looked at the screen, smiled again, and handed the wallet back. "All set. Have a wonderful flight." Donnelly took his wallet and moved toward the jet bridge door without a second glance at anything or anyone near him. Zara watched this happen. She had seen this particular theater performed many times in many places, but watching it happen in real time, 12 inches from her face, still had a way of cutting through. "I was here first," she said. Claudia turned back to Zara with the expression of someone who had briefly been distracted by something more important and was now graciously returning their attention to a minor inconvenience. "The priority lane is for verified premium passengers. You'll need to wait your turn." "I am a premium passenger," Zara said. "I am in seat 1A. My boarding pass is right here." Anyone can say that Claudia replied. Isabel Vargas, from 20 feet away, zoomed in slightly on her phone camera. She kept her hand still. Zara held the phone forward one more time. She did not shake it or wave it. She simply held it out, screen-facing Claudia, the seat number clearly visible. "I'm going to ask you one more time to scan this." Claudia looked at the phone. She looked at it long enough that the people watching thought for just a moment that she was going to do the reasonable thing. She didn't. Instead, she turned to the adjacent printer, typed something at her keyboard, and waited. A boarding pass printed out from the machine. She picked it up with 2 fingers, the way a person picks up something they'd rather not be touching, and held it out toward Zara. "The system shows a duplicate booking on this confirmation number. That means one of these is fraudulent. I'm going to need you to step aside while we sort this out." "That's not my booking number," Zara said, looking at the printed slip. "That's a different name." Claudia did not respond to this. Instead, with a deliberate slowness that left no room for misunderstanding about what she was doing, she took the printed boarding pass, looked directly at Zara, and tore it in half. Not in the trash, not to the side. She tore it while holding eye contact, then dropped the two pieces onto the counter between them. There. Duplicate boarding document, voided. You'll need to visit the rebooking desk to resolve the system conflict. It's down the hall past the security checkpoint. The gate area went quiet in the particular way a space goes quiet when everyone present has just witnessed something and is waiting to find out what it means. From behind her phone, Isabel Vargas whispered to herself, "She just tore it. She actually tore it." Todd Reyes stared at the two pieces of paper on the counter. His hands were at his sides. Everything inside him was telling him to speak. He could feel the words forming. He knew the correct procedure. He knew this was wrong. But Claudia was senior to him by 14 years, and she was still standing there with that particular expression of absolute authority, and the gap between knowing what's right and having enough standing to say it out loud was something Todd was still learning to cross. Zara looked at the torn paper on the counter. Then she looked at Claudia. She did not look shocked. She did not look like she was about to cry. She looked like a person who had suspected this might happen and had already decided what they were going to do next. "You just destroyed a federally issued boarding document," Zara said. "I voided a fraudulent duplicate," Claudia replied. "I'm going to ask for your station manager, right now." Claudia exhaled through her nose the short, controlled exhale of a woman who had done this before and knew exactly how it ended. She reached for the phone on the desk. Derek Moss arrived at Gate 7 looking the way a person looks when they have been station manager of the same terminal for 9 years and believe that experience alone constitutes competence. He was 49 years old with a face that had gone permanently ruddy from years of managing minor crises at elevated volume. His tie was slightly off-center. His suit jacket strained at the buttons in a way that suggested it had been purchased during a more optimistic era. He walked with the brisk stride of a man who assumed every situation was already under control the moment he entered it. "What's the situation?" Claudia folded her hands on the counter. "This passenger is claiming a first-class seat on a confirmed booking, but the system flagged it as a duplicate. She became belligerent when I tried to process the correction. She's been blocking the priority lane for several minutes and refused to step aside." This was not an accurate description of what had happened. It contained the shape of the truth without any of its content. Zara had not been belligerent. She had not refused. She had simply stood still and held out her phone. But Derek Moss looked at Claudia first, and then at Zara, and the order in which he looked at them told the whole story before he said a word. "Ma'am," he said, not looking at her ticket. Not looking at her phone, just looking at her face. "If there's a system issue with your booking, the rebooking desk can have you on the next available flight. I can get someone to walk you down there." "She destroyed my boarding pass," Zara said. "She printed something from her own system, tore it up, and said it was mine." Derek glanced at Claudia. Claudia met his eyes with a look of steady confidence, the look of someone who knows the room is already on their side. "I'm sure there was a miscommunication," Derek said. "These things happen during high-volume boarding windows. The rebooking desk will sort it out for you." "I don't need the rebooking desk," Zara said. "I need someone to scan my boarding pass. My name is Zara Okafor. I am in seat 1A. My ticket is on my phone right here, and it has been right here since I walked up to this podium. No one has scanned it." Todd Reyes, standing slightly behind Claudia, said nothing, but he reached into his jacket pocket and kept his fingers around the edge of his scanner badge, waiting. Derek sighed the sigh of a man who has decided that the shortest path to resolution is to agree with whoever has seniority. Claudia has been running this lane for 14 years. If she flagged a system conflict, there's a reason for it. "I have witnesses," Zara said. Derek looked around the gate area. Several passengers were watching. Isabel Vargas's phone was pointed directly at the podium, and she was not hiding it. A few people in the economy line had stopped moving entirely. An older gentleman near the windows had taken off his reading glasses to watch more clearly. Derek's jaw tightened. He turned slightly away from the crowd and lowered his voice just enough to signal that this was now a private matter being handled privately. "Ma'am, I can either have you escorted to the rebooking desk, or I can call Port Authority to assist. Those are the two options available to you right now." "You haven't looked at my ticket," Zara said. Those words were steady, flat, precise. Then Claudia Farrell delivered the sentence that sealed everything. She looked at Zara fully, completely, from head to foot and said, "I've worked premium service for 14 years. I know what a first-class passenger looks like. And, honey, it's not this." She gestured at Zara the way a person gestures at a display that doesn't belong in the right store window. The gate area went completely silent. Isabel Vargas behind her phone whispered, "Did she just say that?" The older gentleman near the windows stood up from his seat. Todd Reyes closed his eyes for 1 second. Then he opened them again and stayed very still. Derek Moss said nothing. He looked at Claudia. He looked at the passengers watching. And then he reached for the radio on his belt and called for security. Zara did not move. She did not respond to Claudia's words with anger. She did not look around at the crowd for validation. She did not raise her voice or allow her expression to shift into anything that could be described later as aggressive or emotional or difficult. She looked at Claudia for exactly 2 seconds, long enough to make sure the other woman understood that those words had been heard, registered, and recorded in every sense of the word, and then she looked down at her phone. She typed a message. It was short. "LAX, Gate 7, Crestline Air. They destroyed my boarding pass and they're calling security. They refused to scan the ticket. It's happening." She pressed send. 3 seconds passed. 3 dots appeared. "Then don't move. Stay exactly where you are. I'm making a call." Zara put her phone down to her side. She looked straight ahead. She did not look at Claudia. She did not look at Derek. She crossed her arms loosely, not defensively, more like someone settling in, and waited. Isabel Vargas was still recording. She had been live on Instagram for the past 4 minutes. Her stream had 800 viewers, and the number was climbing. She narrated quietly, almost under her breath. "She's not moving. She's not yelling. She's just standing there. And I've never seen anyone look that certain of themselves in a moment like this." Security officer Luis Martinez arrived at Gate 7 approximately 90 seconds after Derek's radio call. He was 30 years old, Hispanic, broad-shouldered, with the careful expression of someone who had learned early in the job to read a room before acting in it. He looked at Zara. He looked at Derek. He looked at the crowd of passengers who were openly watching, several of whom had phones raised. He looked at Isabel's live stream camera pointed directly at the podium. "Ma'am, Derek said to Zara, 'You need to come with Officer Martinez.'" "I'm waiting for a phone call," Zara said. Derek's voice dropped. "Ma'am, this is not a request. My father is on the phone with your corporate office right now," Zara said. "I'd suggest you wait 60 seconds before anyone touches anything." Luis Martinez looked at Zara, then at Derek, then back at Zara. He did not move forward. He stood at the edge of the situation and waited, the way a person waits when they have been trained to de-escalate and can see that the temperature in the room has reasons none of the official parties have explained yet. The 60 seconds passed. Zara's phone rang. The caller ID did not say Dad. It said Desmond Okafor. Zara answered it. She pressed the speaker button. She held the phone out, not dramatically, just clearly so that the audio could reach the people standing closest to her without her having to translate anything. Zara. The voice that came out of the phone was low and even. It was not the voice of a worried father calling to check on his daughter. It was the voice of a person who had already gathered the information they needed, already made the decisions that needed to be made, and was now in the process of executing them. "I'm here, Dad. They're calling security on you." They called security. They also destroyed my boarding pass. I know. Hand the phone to the station manager. Derek Moss looked at the phone extended in Zara's hand. He looked at Luis Martinez. He looked at Claudia, who was standing slightly apart from the podium with her arms crossed, watching the interaction with the patient expression of someone who was certain this would resolve in her favor. Derek took the phone with the casual confidence of a man who was not yet afraid. "Sir, I don't know who you are, but this situation is being handled appropriately, and your daughter's conduct. My name is Desmond Okafor." The name landed. Derek knew that name. Everyone in Crestline Air's orbit knew that name. It had been in the briefings that went out last week and the rumors that circulated the week before, that in the conversation at every break room in every Crestline terminal for the past month. Okafor Capital Group, the acquisition, the new ownership that was supposedly still weeks away from becoming operational. As of 7:45 this morning, Derek Moss Okafor Capital Group completed the acquisition of Crestline Air's parent company. Derek's face changed. Not slowly. Instantly. "I'd suggest you check your internal communications before you finish that sentence." Derek reached for his tablet with one hand while keeping the phone at his ear with the other. "I wanted to make sure I had the correct spelling of your name for the termination file. DEREKMOSS. Is that right?" Derek's fingers were not steady when he opened the tablet. He tapped the inbox icon. The screen loaded. At the top of the list, above the gate scheduling updates, above the weather advisories, above the crew rotation memo, sat an email from corporate HR Global Headquarters marked Urgent in red. Subject line: Ownership Transition Action Required All Crestline Staff. He read the first two lines. Then he stopped reading and just stood there for a moment, holding both the phone and the tablet, staring at a screen that was in the process of dismantling the last 9 years of his life. The email was clear. Okafor Capital Group acquisition finalized at 7:45 hours this date. All operations effective immediately under new ownership structure. Staff communications to follow from incoming executive team. Please welcome. Derek looked up from the tablet. He looked at Zara. He looked at the hoodie. He looked at the canvas backpack. He looked at the calm expression on her face, the expression of someone who had known this moment was coming and had simply been waiting for everyone else to catch up. Then he looked at Claudia. Claudia was still standing with her arms crossed, watching Derek with the slight impatience of someone waiting for the manager to finish the formality so the disruptive passenger could be removed. "Claudia," Derek said. His voice had changed. Something had left it, the authority, the surety, the casual assumption that everything happening here was under control. What remained was thinner, quieter. "Take the phone. What? Why? Just take it." Claudia walked over to Derek with the expression of someone humoring a colleague who was being unnecessarily dramatic. She took the phone. She put it to her ear. "Hello? I don't know who you think you are, but we've handled this situation, Claudia Farrell. Employee ID 38-471. Claudia stopped talking. "Is that correct?" Her mouth remained slightly open. She said nothing. "I have your personnel file in front of me," Desmond said. 11 complaints over 6 years. Rudeness, passenger profiling, hostile conduct. All 11 of them were buried. Not one resulted in formal discipline. That ends today. Claudia's free hand moved to the edge of the podium counter. Her fingers found the surface and held on. "I was following protocol," she said. Her voice had lost its shape. The deep, smooth authority it had carried for the past 20 minutes was gone. What was left sounded smaller, thinner. "Protocol," Desmond said, "is scanning a ticket when a passenger presents one." What you did today was decide before a single piece of documentation was reviewed that my daughter did not belong in that lane. Then you destroyed a travel document. Then you had security called on her. And you did all of it in front of 60 witnesses and a camera that has been live on Instagram for the past 6 minutes. Claudia's eyes moved slowly across the counter until they found Zara's face. Zara was looking back at her. "Your daughter," Claudia said. It came out barely above a whisper. The calculation was visible. You could see it moving across Claudia Farrell's face, the rapid, desperate arithmetic of a person trying to find a way out of a room that has no exits. She looked at Zara's hoodie. She looked at the backpack. She looked at the boarding pass on the phone screen. She looked at Todd Reyes, standing silently beside the scanner. She looked at Isabel's camera, still recording. There was no combination of variables that helped her. "You're going to apologize to my daughter," Desmond said. "Then you're going to hand your badge to the gate agent standing next to you. And then you're going to leave this terminal." His voice had not risen. It had not dropped into coldness or threat. It maintained exactly the same register from the first word to the last, even controlled and completely final. That was the most frightening part. Claudia looked at Zara. For a long moment, neither woman spoke. The gate area was so quiet that the boarding announcements from the adjacent gate were clearly audible. Someone in the economy line coughed. A child somewhere behind the rope started to say something and was quickly hushed by a parent. Claudia started. She stopped. She tried again. "I'm sorry." The words came out wrong, too fast, too small, aimed somewhere in the direction of Zara's shoulder rather than her face. "I didn't hear you," Zara said. Not cruelly, just clearly. Claudia Farrell, 14-year veteran of premium service woman who had never once in her professional life been required to mean these words to this person in this direction, looked Zara Okafor directly in the eye. "I'm sorry," she said, louder this time. Her voice broke slightly on the second word. "Scan the ticket," Zara said. Todd Reyes stepped forward. He took the scanner from the counter, the scanner Claudia had prevented him from using twice. He held it out toward Zara's phone with both hands. Zara held up the screen. The scanner beeped. "Seat 1A. Welcome aboard, Miss Okafor." From the economy boarding line, a single person started clapping. Then 2 more. Then a small, scattered sound of approval moved through the gate area, not thunderous, not performative, just real. Isabel Vargas lowered her camera for the first time. She pressed her free hand to her mouth. She was not crying yet, but she was close. Claudia Farrell reached up and unclipped her badge from her blazer lapel. Her fingers were not steady. She placed it on the counter without looking at it and then turned and walked away from the podium in the direction of the staff corridor, her heels no longer sounding steady on the floor. "Board the plane," Desmond said through the phone. "But give the phone to Mr. Moss first. I'm not finished." Derek Moss took the phone back from Zara the way a person accepts something they know is going to hurt. His hands were damp. He pressed the phone to his ear and said nothing, waiting. "Mr. Moss." "Sir." "You had the ticket in front of you," Desmond said. The passenger had been at that podium for over 8 minutes. During that time, you could have looked at the screen. You could have asked your junior agent, who apparently already knew the ticket was valid, to run the scan. Instead, you threatened my daughter with removal by force. And then, you defended the agent who told my daughter she didn't look like a first-class passenger. "I didn't, sir. That wasn't hand your badge to Mr. Reyes," Desmond said. "He is acting station manager for this terminal until my transition team arrives. You are relieved of duty effective right now." "You can't. I have a union representative." "There are procedures. You violated federal regulations when you denied boarding to a confirmed passenger without documented cause. You also violated Crestline Air's own Code of Conduct, Section 4, which covers discrimination and passenger harassment, and this entire exchange has been recorded." "Mr. Moss." Every word. Derek Moss looked around the gate area one final time. The passengers watching. The camera still held by the woman in the corner. Todd Reyes standing at the podium, quiet, waiting. Luis Martinez, who had not moved from his position at the edge of the situation because he had understood 20 minutes ago that nothing here required him to physically intervene. Derek unclipped his badge. He set it on the counter. He unclipped his radio and placed it beside the badge. He did not say anything else. He turned and walked toward the main terminal, head down, moving through the crowd of passengers he had spent 9 years deciding things about. Todd Reyes picked up the badge. He looked at it for a moment, then he clipped it to his own jacket. Desmond's voice came through the phone one more time. "Zara, I'm here. Board the plane. I'll see you in Chicago." Zara ended the call. She picked up her canvas backpack from the floor where she had set it down during the confrontation, swung it over one shoulder, and walked toward the jet bridge door. She did not look back. But as she passed Todd Reyes, she stopped for exactly 2 seconds. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for trying." Todd looked at her. His eyes were bright with something he was working to keep contained. "I should have tried harder," he said. Zara nodded once. Then she walked through the door. Isabel Vargas stood at the edge of the priority lane, her phone still recording. The live stream now had 42,000 viewers. Comments were moving so fast they were nearly unreadable. She watched Zara disappear down the jet bridge and then lowered her camera slowly. She said nothing for a moment. Then she looked directly into the lens. "You just watched a 23-year-old girl stand completely still and let the truth do all the work. I've been covering travel for 4 years. I've never seen anything like this." She stopped the stream. The jet bridge was cool and dim after the brightness of the terminal. Zara's footsteps were quiet on the rubberized floor. The noise of the gate, the crowd, the cameras, the radio calls, and the echo of everything that had just happened fell away behind the door. For the first time in nearly 30 minutes, she exhaled fully. Not because it was over. It was not over. She knew that with the particular clarity of someone who had spent her whole life understanding that these things are never over after one conversation, one confrontation, one phone call from one powerful father. The world does not change in a single gate area on a Tuesday morning. But she had not moved. She had not been moved, and for right now in this jet bridge that was enough. She stepped through the aircraft door. Waiting at the threshold was flight attendant Fiona Ashby, 38 years old with the kind of professional composure that looked flawless from a distance and brittle up close. Her uniform was immaculate. Her posture was perfect. Her smile arrived on time and at the correct angle. She looked at Zara's boarding pass, then at Zara's hoodie, then at the backpack. The smile remained, but its temperature dropped several degrees, not enough to point to, not enough to report, just enough to feel if you were paying attention. Zara was always paying attention. "Right this way," Fiona said. She gestured down the aisle toward the front of the cabin without offering to take the bag, without using Zara's name, without the small warmth that makes a greeting feel like a greeting. Zara walked to seat 1A, placed her backpack in the overhead bin, and sat down. She said nothing. She pulled out her phone, set it on her tray, and looked out the window. The LAX tarmac was bright and flat under the morning sun. She waited. Richard Donnelly boarded 6 passengers after Zara. He had the easy, self-assured gait of someone who had never once worried about being told to wait in the right lane. He was wearing the same navy suit he had been wearing at the gate, the suit that Claudia had welcomed with an immediate smile and a confirmed upgrade, while Zara had been standing right beside him with her phone extended and her ticket ignored. He settled into his seat at 3C, adjusted his jacket, and then looked up toward the front of the cabin. He saw Zara in 1A. He stared at her for a moment. Then he pressed the call button. Fiona arrived at his row within seconds, faster, Zara noted, without turning around than she had moved in any direction since boarding began. Miss Donnelly said there must be a mistake. I requested one, A, specifically when I checked in. That's the bulkhead seat, and I do my best work in the bulkhead. Can you check whether there's been a system error? Fiona looked at her manifest. Mr. Donnelly, you're confirmed in 3C. I understand that's what the manifest says. I'm asking if there's flexibility. He tilted his head toward Zara's seat. She's clearly a non-rev or a mileage upgrade. I'm a platinum member. I think the right call here. Fiona walked to seat 1A. She leaned down slightly, her voice taking on that particular tone of someone asking a favor on behalf of someone else's inconvenience. Excuse me, Miss Winslow Okafor, Zara said without looking up from the window. I'm sorry, Miss Okafor. Mr. Donnelly is a very frequent flyer with us, and he really does need the extra space in row 1 for his work during the flight. Would you be willing to swap to 3C? It's still first class. I booked seat 1, Zara said. I'm going to stay in seat 1A. Fiona stayed beside the seat. I completely understand. It would just really help the crew if Zara turned from the window and looked at Fiona directly for the first time since boarding. Her voice was not unkind. It was simply final. No. Fiona straightened. From 3C, Donnelly said loudly enough to be heard across the first-class cabin. Come on, I'll have the crew bring her a drink voucher. She probably doesn't even know what the legroom up there is for. Fiona's mouth twitched. It was small. It was fast. It was exactly the kind of small, fast thing that people dismiss as nothing. Zara saw it. Sir, please, Fiona said to Donnelly in a tone that was not actually asking him to stop. Then she turned back to Zara with a slightly harder expression. Look, it would really go a long way. If you ask me one more time, Zara said quietly, I'm going to file a report about every interaction since I boarded this aircraft, starting with the greeting at the door. Fiona's eyes narrowed. Fine, she said. Stay there. She walked back toward Donnelly and leaned toward him with the warm, conspiratorial ease of someone who has decided which side of the aisle they are on. I'm so sorry, Mr. Donnelly. You'll have my full attention for the whole flight. Champagne, before we push back, Unbelievable Donnelly muttered. But he accepted the champagne. Fiona began the beverage service 20 minutes into the boarding process once the cabin was full and the door was sealed. She started at row 2, then row 3. Then moved to row 4, where a couple traveling together asked 3 questions about the meal service. She answered all 3 at length warmly with the kind of engaged helpfulness that was entirely absent from her interaction with seat 1A. She did not stop at row 1. Zara pressed the call button. The chime sounded. Fiona continued serving at row 4. Zara pressed it again. Fiona finished the couple's questions. She picked up 2 empty glasses from row 3. She turned toward the galley. She passed seat 1A without stopping. Zara pressed the button a 3rd time. Fiona stopped 3 rows back. She turned slowly and walked up to row 1 with the expression of someone managing their patience carefully. Yes. What do you need, water, please? Zara said. And you skipped this row during service. I was getting to you. You served rows 2, 3, and 4. In that order. This is row 1. We have a priority service protocol for... There is no protocol that puts row 1 after row 3, Zara said simply. Fiona looked at her. Water? Fine. She returned from the galley with a plastic cup, no ice, no napkin, no acknowledgement, and set it on the tray table with slightly more force than necessary. A small amount of water splashed over the rim. Thank you, Zara said. She picked up her phone and opened the Notes app. She began typing quietly, methodically. Incident log. Flight 304. Fiona Ashby. Gate interaction dismissive. Boarding no name, use no welcome. Seat dispute. Offered to remove confirmed first-class passenger for platinum member at cruise initiation. Call button ignored 3 times. Drink service skipped row, 1 served after rows 2 through 4. Cup delivered without ice or napkin water spilled on tray. No apology. She saved the draft. Then she heard it. Fiona had moved toward Donnelly's row, champagne in hand, and was speaking in a lowered voice. Not low enough. Don't stress about it, Richard. The new owners don't have operations locked in yet. Harlow's handling transition. He told the crew nothing changes until the Q2 review. You know how acquisitions go. Donnelly relaxed visibly in his seat. Good to know, he said. Zara did not move. She did not look up from her phone. She kept her face completely still. She opened a new note. 1 word underlined Harlow. She typed beneath it, Q2 review. Fiona says nothing changes, he told the crew. Internal. Pre-acquisition communication. Who is he? Find out before boardroom. She sent her father a message. There's someone named Harlow. Fiona told the cabin crew nothing would change under new ownership. He communicated with them before the acquisition was public. Something is happening on the inside. The 3 dots came back in under 10 seconds. Then I know exactly who Harlow is. Don't say anything more on board. I'll explain in Chicago. Everything is already in motion. Zara put her phone face down on the tray table. She looked out the window at the tarmac. There's always someone named Harlow, she thought. Captain Sandra Williams had been flying commercial aircraft for 22 years. She was 50 years old, had gray threaded through her dark hair that she made no effort to conceal, and possessed the particular calm of someone for whom actual emergencies had become the baseline and everything below that threshold was simply logistics. She emerged from the cockpit 20 minutes before pushback. She was holding a printout from the aircraft communication terminal. She walked into the first-class cabin without her hat, which meant she was not on procedure. She was looking for someone. Is there a Zara Okafor on board? The cabin shifted. Donnelly in 3C sat up straight with the look of a man hoping to watch someone be escorted off. Zara raised her hand. Captain Williams walked to row 1. She stood in front of seat 1A and looked at Zara with an expression that contained no judgment whatsoever, something that had been notably absent from most of Zara's morning. Miss Okafor, I received a direct communication from the incoming chairman of the board approximately 7 minutes ago. He asked me to personally welcome you aboard and to verify that your in-flight experience has been appropriate. She paused. She looked at the plastic cup on the tray table, no ice water ring visible on the rim from where it had been put down carelessly. She looked at the champagne glass in Donnelly's hand at row 3. Then she looked at Fiona, who was standing in the aisle holding an empty tray and slowly turning the color of copy paper. Fiona Captain Williams said, Has Miss Okafor been served since boarding? I brought her water, Fiona. The captain's voice did not rise. It did not need to. This passenger is the daughter of Desmond Okafor, the man who signed your employment agreement as of this morning. Do you have anything you'd like to say to her? Fiona turned to Zara. The professional composure that had held steady through every exchange in the past 40 minutes finally broke along its seams. Her eyes filled. Her voice, when it came, was not composed. I'm sorry. I had no idea who Zara looked at her for a moment. Not with anger. With something quieter than that. Quieter and, in its own way, more cutting. That's exactly the problem, Fiona. The apology should have been available before you knew who I was. Captain Williams nodded once. Fiona, you're relieved of service for the remainder of this flight. Please take the jump seat in the rear galley. Do not speak to passengers. But, Captain, now. Fiona walked to the back of the plane with her head down. Not a single passenger spoke as she passed. From the galley, Nina Cruz emerged. She was 32 years old, with dark hair pulled back and the quiet competence of someone who had simply been doing the job correctly while everyone else was doing other things. She moved to row 1 without being asked. She removed the plastic cup from Zara's tray. She replaced it with a proper glass filled with water and ice set on a folded linen napkin. She placed a menu card beside it. "Welcome aboard, Miss Okafor," Nina said. "It's a genuine pleasure. Is there anything I can bring you before we push back?" Zara looked at her, at the glass, at the napkin that no one had offered her in the past hour of her mourning. "Thank you, Nina," she said, "and I'll remember your name, for the right reasons." Nina smiled the uncomplicated smile of someone who had not needed to calculate whether kindness was safe. Captain Williams returned to the cockpit. As she passed row 3, she paused beside Donnelly's seat without stopping entirely. "Mr. Donnelly, the upgrade request to row 1 was denied. I trust we won't revisit that." Donnelly said nothing. He looked at his champagne. The aircraft door sealed. The engines began their low, steady rise. And as the plane pushed back from Gate 7 at LAX, Richard Donnelly sat very quietly in 3C and thought about a phone call he needed to make the moment they landed in Chicago. The wheels of Flight 304 touched down at Chicago O'Hare at 11:14 in the morning. In the first-class cabin, something unusual happened. As the seatbelt sign chimed off and the usual immediate rush of bags and jackets and restless movement began, the passengers in row 1 through 4 stayed seated. No one pushed past. No one stood over Zara's row with a bag already halfway out of the bin. It was not orchestrated. There was no announcement requesting it. It was simply the spontaneous behavior of people who had spent 2.5 hours quietly reconsidering something. Zara stood. She pulled her canvas backpack from the overhead bin, settled it over one shoulder, and looked back at Nina Cruz, who was standing at the galley entrance. "Nina," she said, "when the transition team contacts this crew, make sure your name is on the right list." Nina nodded. The kind of nod that carries actual meaning. Zara walked to the aircraft door. Captain Williams was already standing there with the first officer. "Miss Okafor." The captain's voice was low, respectful, with none of the manufactured warmth of airline formality. "Ground team is standing by. We received word to hold the jet bridge until you've deplaned." "That won't be necessary," Zara said. "Let everyone off. I just need fair treatment, not special treatment." She walked up the jet bridge. The O'Hare terminal had a different atmosphere than LAX, quieter in a particular way, the kind of quiet that exists in places where decisions get made. At the end of the jet bridge, no gate agent was waiting. Instead, 3 people in dark suits stood at attention. Legal team, by the look of them, flanking a man who did not need a suit to communicate authority. Desmond Okafor was 54 years old. He was tall, with broad shoulders that had never quite found a relaxed position, and a face that had learned over decades to be very selective about what it showed. He was wearing a gray suit today. He was holding a dark folder under his left arm. When he saw Zara, something happened to his face, briefly. A few seconds of something that looked like relief, mixed with a pride that he would never know quite how to put into words. He took the backpack from her shoulder without asking. "How bad?" he said. Educational, Zara replied. "Dad, there's someone named Harlow who communicated directly with the cabin crew before the acquisition was announced. He told them nothing would change under new ownership. The flight attendant repeated it like it was routine information. Whatever he's built inside that organization, it goes deeper than gate agents." Desmond opened the folder he was carrying. She could see the yellow highlight marks from 5 feet away. "We found the emails," he said. "Come on. Board meeting in 35 minutes. They think this is a meet and greet." Richard Donnelly deplaned 4 minutes after Zara. He stepped into the O'Hare terminal and saw the scene at the end of the jet bridge. The 3 suits, the folder, the easy authority of Desmond Okafor standing in the middle of an airport corridor like he owned it, because now he did. Donnelly's face went through several expressions in rapid sequence. He turned away from the main corridor and walked quickly to a quieter stretch of wall near the departure screens. He dialed. "Preston. It's Richard." The voice on the other end, Donnelly. "You're early. Briefing isn't until we have a problem. The girl from the gate. What about her?" "She's not a non-rev. She's not a mileage upgrade. She's with Okafor." "She is Okafor. His daughter." A pause on the other end, longer than Donnelly expected. "Did she hear anything?" "She was in 1A. Fiona talked in front of her. The full Q2 line." Another pause, shorter this time. When the voice came back, it was quieter and more deliberate. "Get to the tower. Don't use the main entrance. Don't speak to anyone from corporate communications. Preston." The line went dead. Donnelly stood with the phone at his side, looking at the departure screens without reading any of them. In the back of the black SUV heading downtown, Desmond Okafor opened the folder on his lap. The pages inside were printed emails. Each one bore yellow highlight marks in the margins. Each one had a name on it: Preston Harlow, VP of Customer Experience. His name was at the top of every chain. "The memo is dated September 18th, Desmond said. "The subject line is protecting the premium environment." He sent it to all ground operations supervisors and senior cabin crew. 340 employees received it. Zara looked at the highlighted text. She read slowly. "Gate staff are directed to conduct visual audits of priority and premium lanes to ensure a consistent high-value atmosphere. Passengers displaying non-conforming presentation markers, casual attire, absence of visible status, indicators, profiles inconsistent with high-value clientele should be redirected for secondary verification." She looked up. Claudia wasn't acting alone. No, she was following that memo. It told her exactly what to do and gave her official cover for doing it. Zara looked back at the highlighted page, and Donnelly Desmond closed the folder. "Richard Donnelly is listed on Harlow's internal advisory panel for brand experience strategy. Paid engagement, $40,000 per quarter, processed through a consulting contract to a company called Donnelly Advisory Group." Zara sat with that for a moment. The man who walked past me at the gate, who Claudia waved through without a second look, was on the payroll of the man who wrote the policy that let her do it. "That's right. So every part of what happened this morning was connected." Desmond looked at his daughter. "That's why I need you in that room today, Zara. You're not just my daughter. You're the evidence they didn't account for. They built a system to keep certain people out and make it look like standard procedure, but they couldn't control you standing still and refusing to move." Zara looked out the car window at the Chicago skyline approaching. "Let's go introduce them to the evidence," she said. Crestline Tower occupied the northeast corner of downtown Chicago's financial district, 38 floors of glass and steel that reflected the lakefront on clear mornings and disappeared into gray on cloudy ones. Today was clear. The executive boardroom on the 38th floor had a full wall of windows facing the lake. On most mornings, the people inside felt like they were looking out at a world they had been placed on top of. The view had a way of making the decisions made in this room feel inevitable, permanent, beyond challenge. 14 executives sat around a mahogany table that had cost more than some annual salaries. The air conditioning was set to 68 degrees. Almost everyone was slightly overdressed for it. Preston Harlow sat at the far end of the table. He was 52 years old and looked precisely like the person who had been placed in charge of deciding what premium looked like. He wore a navy suit that had clearly been made for him, not purchased-made. His cufflinks were understated gold. His silver hair was swept back in a way that looked natural because it had been styled to look natural. Everything about Preston Harlow communicated that he had spent considerable time and money ensuring that he looked like someone whose decisions were beyond question. He was currently reassuring the room. Okafor is a capital man. Harlow said the practiced ease of someone who had been giving this speech for 3 days. He bought the airline for the route licenses and the infrastructure. He's not going to walk in here and start reordering operations. We show him clean numbers, emphasize year-over-year performance in premium revenue, and let him feel welcomed. By Q2, everything settles and we continue business as usual. Across the table, Diane Flores from HR was looking at her notes. She was 44, methodical, and had spent the past week not sleeping well. The LAX video has 14 million views, she said, as of this morning. Harlow, if he leads with that. That's a ground ops issue, Harlow said. It's below this level. Claudia was overzealous. We issue a statement of regret, reference ongoing training initiatives, and move on. It has nothing to do with executive strategy. Diane looked at her notes again. She did not write anything. She just looked at them. The double doors at the far end of the boardroom opened. Desmond Okafor did not shake hands when he entered a room he already owned. He walked to the end of the table furthest from Preston Harlow and placed his folder on the polished wood with a single quiet motion. He did not speak immediately. The executives waited. Some of them were holding pens they were no longer writing with. Some of them had the careful expression of people watching a controlled demolition begin. Then Zara walked in. She was still wearing the black hoodie, still carrying the canvas backpack. Her jogger pants were the same ones she had put on in London before a red-eye flight that now felt like it had happened in a different part of her life. She looked like someone who had traveled a long way, handled something difficult, and arrived anyway. She dropped the backpack onto the boardroom table with a sound that was not loud, but was definitive. The sound of something that belonged there. Preston Harlow looked at her. He couldn't help it. He looked at the hoodie, the backpack, the worn sneakers, and for one fraction of a second, his face made the same calculation Claudia Farrell's face had made at Gate 7. The same instinctive dismissal. The same brief assessment of whether this person matched the room. He corrected it immediately, but it had already happened. Zara had already seen it. "This is my daughter, Zara," Desmond said. "She's here because the reason we're all having this conversation today started with what happened to her at LAX this morning." Harlow leaned forward slightly. "Mr. Okafor, I want to personally and unreservedly apologize for Miss Okafor's experience. Ground staff can sometimes—" "Sit down, Preston." It wasn't an invitation. It was two words spoken at the same volume as the rest of the sentence, carrying the weight of everything Desmond Okafor had built and paid for and decided. Harlow sat. Desmond looked at his daughter. "Zara, tell the room what happened." Zara did not have notes. She did not need them. She had been running through the sequence since she sat in seat 1A and watched the tarmac and understood that what had happened at Gate 7 was not a mistake or an overreaction or a misunderstanding. It was a procedure. She had been on the receiving end of a procedure. She told the room, from the moment she stepped up to the priority lane podium to the moment Claudia refused to look at the phone to the torn boarding pass to Derek's arrival and his immediate deference to the person with seniority, rather than the person with the ticket to the security call, to the 11 minutes it took for the situation to collapse once her father was on the line. She spoke for 4 minutes. Her voice was level. Her eyes moved around the table periodically, letting each face understand that she was aware of them and they were part of this conversation. When she reached the moment on the plane when Fiona had leaned over Donnelly's champagne and said Harlow's handling transition, "Nothing changes until Q2." She let the sentence sit for a moment before moving forward. She watched Preston Harlow's jaw tighten. She watched two of the junior executives exchange a look. She watched Diane Flores press the cap of her pen against the notepad in front of her with steady, controlled pressure. Harlow said, "That was taken out of context." "What context?" Zara said makes nothing changes, an appropriate message for a flight attendant to relay to a passenger during a flight that departed from a gate where a passenger's civil rights were violated 2 hours earlier. Harlow didn't answer that. Desmond opened the folder. He slid a single sheet of paper down the length of the table. It traveled the full distance and stopped directly in front of Preston Harlow, as if it had been aimed. Memo dated September 18th, Desmond said. Protecting the premium environment. Addressed to all ground operations supervisors and senior cabin crew. That is your signature, Preston. Harlow looked at the paper. His hands flat on the table did not move. That was a discussion document. A draft for internal conversation about service standards. Claudia Farrell used that exact language, Zara said. Visual audit. Non-conforming presentation markers. She used those phrases at the podium when she refused to scan my ticket. She cited the initiative by name. That is not a draft. That is active policy. It was guidance that ended my flight before it started, Zara said. Guidance that caused a federal travel document to be destroyed. Guidance that resulted in security being called on a paying passenger in front of 60 witnesses and a live camera. Your guidance, Preston. Your name on the top. Diane Flores pushed her chair back an inch, quietly, without drawing attention to it. Harlow glanced around the table. He was looking for the expression on each face that would tell him someone was going to back him up. He found caution. He found eyes looking down at documents they were suddenly very interested in. He found Diane Flores's chair 1 inch further from him than it had been. He found no backup. The boardroom door opened. Richard Donnelly entered the way a man enters when he has convinced himself he is arriving with solutions. His jacket was rumpled. There was perspiration at his temples. He was already talking before he cleared the doorway. Preston, I came straight from O'Hare. The Fiona situation is going to be manageable if we get ahead of it. But there's a liability question around the boarding footage, and I think we need... He stopped. He saw Zara first because Zara was seated directly in his sightline at the side of the table. Then he saw Desmond at the far end. Then he saw the faces of 14 executives watching him from their seats. He stood in the open doorway. Mr. Donnelly, Desmond said pleasantly, "Please come in. We were just getting to you." Donnelly walked to a chair. His movements had changed. The ease was gone. "Richard Donnelly," Desmond said, addressing the room rather than the man. "Platinum member on the flight from LAX this morning. Currently listed as a paid external advisor on Mr. Harlow's Brand Experience Division. $40,000 per quarter paid to Donnelly Advisory Group." A few executives looked up from their papers. Mr. Donnelly also walked past my daughter this morning at the gate podium. He moved directly to the front of the priority lane, and the gate agent who had refused to scan my daughter's ticket immediately smiled, welcomed him by name, and cleared him for boarding without any of the verification process she had just subjected my daughter to. Donnelly looked at his hands on the table. "The man who cut in front of my daughter," Desmond continued, "was on the payroll of the man who wrote the policy that allowed it to happen. At the same terminal, on the same flight, on the same morning that Okafor Capital Group completed the acquisition of Crestline Air." The room was very quiet. "That is not coincidence," Desmond said. "That is a structure. It is a structure built to protect certain people and exclude others, and it is a structure that Mr. Harlow has been running with documented internal authorization for at least 6 months." Harlow stood up. His voice had found something harder underneath the smoothness, something that had been pressed down for years under tailored suits and careful language, and was now showing its edge. "You cannot terminate me. My contract is specific. Termination without cause triggers." "Gross misconduct," Zara said. She reached into the canvas backpack. She pulled out her phone and placed it in the center of the table screen up. On it was the full compiled incident log she had been building since she boarded the aircraft. Timestamps, quotes, named individuals, actions, witness accounts, Isabel's live stream link, discrimination, organizational profiling with documented written authorization, embezzlement of corporate funds through fraudulent consulting contracts. Harlow looked at the phone. Fraud. We examined the consulting fees paid to Donnelly Advisory Group, Desmond said. The scope of work billed does not correspond to any documented services. The payments correlate directly with the implementation timeline of the visual screening policy. That is not a consulting arrangement. That is a financial structure built around hiding discrimination behind a paycheck. Donnelly looked at Harlow. His expression had shifted from anxiety into something closer to accusation. "You told me it was legal," he said. "You told me it was a legitimate retainer." Richard Harlow started. "You said it was clean." Donnelly. Harlow's voice went sharp. "Security." Desmond said the word once at normal volume. The boardroom doors opened. The same detail that had met Zara and Desmond at the airport entered the room. 2 officers from the Chicago Police Department waited in the hallway behind them. Harlow looked at the officers. He looked at the folder. He looked at the phone on the table. He looked at the 14 faces of the executives he had been running this division beside for years, and in none of those faces did he find the expression he needed. "This is my company," he said. "I built this brand." Zara stood. "You built a wall," she said. She watched the officers move toward him. "And we're taking it down." Donnelly did not fight. He simply sat in his chair and looked at his uncle with the expression of someone calculating too late how many decisions they had deferred to the wrong person. He was still sitting when the officers reached him. The room was silent after the doors closed. 14 executives sat around the table. They looked at Desmond Okafor. They looked at the folder. They looked at Zara, who was still standing backpack on the chair behind her phone on the table. Desmond looked at Diane Flores. "You flagged concerns about that memo twice," he said. "I found both emails in the discovery file. You put your objections in writing when the people around you were not putting anything in writing." Diane's hands were completely still on the table. Her eyes were bright. "Yes," she said. "You'll be leading the transition committee for the new passenger equity protocols," Desmond said. "Starting today." Diane Flores exhaled something she had been holding for 6 months. She nodded. Desmond looked at the rest of the table. "Most of you are not the problem. But all of you worked inside the problem and most of you stayed quiet. That's over. We are going to rebuild this, and we are going to rebuild it correctly, and I need people in these chairs who understand what that means." He looked at Zara. "The floor is yours." Zara looked at the empty chair at the head of the table, the chair where Harlow had been sitting 20 minutes earlier. She did not sit in it. She pulled her own chair to the side of the table, sat down, and opened a fresh page on her phone. "First order of business," she said. "The September 18th memo, and every document connected to it, every version, every reply, every distribution list, is to be pulled from all systems today. Not archived, removed. And I want the name of every supervisor who received it and implemented it without raising an objection." She looked at the room. No one spoke. Second, the 11 complaint files accumulated against Claudia Farrell over 6 years. I want a complete accounting of who approved the suppression of each one and why. That report goes to our legal team by the end of the business day. Third, there is a gate agent at LAX named Todd Reyes, who tried to do the right thing twice this morning and was silenced both times. He is currently serving as acting station manager. Make it permanent. And make sure he knows it came from this room." She paused. "And Nina Cruz, flight attendant on this morning's departure. She did her job with dignity and care when everything around her was failing. Find out what she needs and give it to her." The boardroom was quiet, not the tight defensive quiet of before. Something different. The quiet of people who were beginning to understand what direction things were going to move in. An executive near the middle of the table, young early 30s, who had not spoken once since the meeting started, raised his hand slightly. "What do we do about the public response?" "The video is still trending." Zara looked at him. "We don't manage it," she said. We respond to it honestly. We acknowledge what happened. We name the changes we're making. We don't use the word alleged, and we don't hide behind process language. She looked at her phone. She looked back at the room. People are not angry because an airline made a mistake. People are angry because they recognized themselves in that video. They've been in that line, in that. They've had that look given to them. You don't manage that with a press release. You respond to it by actually changing. Diane Flores was writing. So were three others. Desmond looked at his daughter. For the first time all morning, he allowed himself a small, quiet expression of something that was not business and not strategy. It lasted about 3 seconds. Then they both went back to work. Isabel Vargas had stopped her live stream at Gate 7 with 42,000 viewers. By the time Flight 304 landed in Chicago, the full recording had been posted to every platform she used. The caption was 11 words. She stood still and let the truth do all the work. No hashtag demanding a boycott. No outrage headline. Just footage, names, and the quiet fact of a young woman who did not move when she was told to. By evening, the video had 22 million views. The comments section was not primarily angry. It was in a way that surprised even Isabel, primarily personal. Thousands of people writing sentences that started with the same words. This happened to me. I was in this exact line. I had this exact look given to me. I didn't know what to do. I didn't say anything. I didn't have anyone to call. Some of them ended differently from the story at Gate 7. Most of them ended with the person complying and leaving and carrying the weight of it home with them. The Chicago Tribune ran the embezzlement story the following morning. The headline was specific: Crestline Air VP indicted on financial fraud charges. Internal emails show discrimination policy funded through consulting scheme. Preston Harlow was charged with 12 counts of wire fraud and embezzlement. The consulting payments to Donnelly Advisory Group totaled just over $2 million over 3.5 years. His employment contract's golden parachute clause was voided under the gross misconduct provision which Desmond Okafor had specifically included in the acquisition agreement. Harlow's assets, including a lakefront property in Michigan and a share in a private aircraft partnership, were frozen pending trial. Richard Donnelly was terminated from his hedge fund position the next morning. The firm issued no public statement. A brief internal email said only that his role had been eliminated as part of a strategic restructuring. The irony of the phrase was not lost on anyone following the story. Claudia Farrell and Derek Moss filed wrongful termination claims the following week. A federal judge dismissed both suits within 10 days after reviewing Isabel's footage, the security camera recordings from Gate 7, and the recorded phone call between Desmond Okafor and both employees. The ruling noted that the evidence of discriminatory conduct was unambiguous and extensively documented. Both were permanently barred from employment in commercial aviation. 1 week after the incident, a message appeared on Instagram. It was posted by a woman named Rosa Ibarra, 52 years old, who had spent 15 years as a ground crew supervisor for Crestline Air before being terminated 4 years earlier. The message was handwritten, photographed, and posted without edits. It read, 6 years ago, I filed an internal complaint. I watched a black passenger turned away from the premium boarding lane without cause. HR told me it was not a matter for escalation. When I filed a second report 3 months later, after seeing it happen again, I was placed on a performance improvement plan. I resigned before they could fire me. I've been carrying that silence ever since. What Zara Okafor did last week gave me back my voice. I am sorry it took this long. The post was shared 400,000 times in 24 hours. 2 days later, Desmond Okafor's legal team reached out to Rosa Ibarra. Her formal complaint records from 6 years earlier had been found in the discovery documents. Her files had been buried by Harlow's predecessor, who had retired comfortably and was now the subject of an additional inquiry. Rosa agreed to join the Passenger Equity Council, the independent oversight body that Zara had proposed in the boardroom. She accepted no title and no salary. When Zara called her to confirm, Rosa said only, "I don't want a position. I just want my name cleared." Zara said, "It already is, but your seat at that table means we don't forget how we got here." There was a short silence on the line. Then Rosa said, "Then I'll be there." 6 weeks after the incident, Zara Okafor returned to LAX Terminal 4. She was not returning for any symbolic reason. She was accompanying part of the transition team conducting the first round of operational reviews under the new equity protocols. She had a full schedule of meetings. She was carrying the same canvas backpack, slightly more worn at one strap from the past month and a half of constant use. She passed through the main terminal and turned toward the domestic gates. Gate 7. The podium looked the same. The priority lane had the same red carpet, the same rope divider, the same signage. But the person standing behind the counter was Todd Reyes, who was wearing a station manager badge that had his name printed in full and would not be handed back at the end of the morning. He saw Zara from across the gate area. He stood straighter. Not out of deference, more the way a person stands when they see someone who changed the direction of their life, and they want to be worth the change. He nodded. She nodded back. She was about to continue toward the meeting rooms when she stopped. At the entrance to the priority lane, a young woman was standing. She looked 20 or 21. Her hair was natural and rounded thick coils that caught the terminal light. She was wearing a hoodie the color of a ripe orange, and her backpack was stuffed so full that the zipper was straining at one corner. She was holding her phone out toward the boarding pass scanner, but she had not stepped forward. She was looking at the sign above the priority lane entrance. She was looking at the other passengers, the ones in business attire moving with the particular confident ease of people who had done this 1,000 times, and she was looking at herself. She was calculating whether she was allowed to be here. Zara stopped walking. Todd Reyes had already seen the girl. He came out from behind the counter without being asked, not quickly, not formally, just steadily, the way a person moves when they know exactly what they're doing. "Hey," he said. "You in the orange hoodie." The girl looked up. "Come on up. You're Group 1, right?" She looked behind her, then back at him. "Me. You. Right here. Scan right here." The girl stepped forward into the priority lane. She held up her phone. The scanner beeped. "Welcome aboard," Todd said. "Enjoy your flight." The girl smiled, the startled, genuine smile of someone who had prepared for a different outcome. Zara watched this from 15 feet away. She did not make herself known. She did not walk forward to introduce herself or add anything to the moment. The moment was already complete. It belonged to that girl and to Todd and to the morning, and adding anything to it would have diminished it. She stood still, and then she turned and walked toward her meetings. She did not take a first-class seat on her return flight to Chicago that evening. She booked economy, row 19 middle seat, between an older man who was already asleep before boarding, finished, and a teenage girl who spent the entire flight watching videos with her headphones on and occasionally laughing at something Zara could not hear. It was without question one of the better flights she had taken in a while. At the inaugural meeting of the Passenger Equity Council, held 5 weeks after the incident, Zara Okafor was invited to address the group. She had not prepared remarks. She stood at the front of the room with her hands loose at her sides and looked at the people seated in front of her: Rosa Ibarra, Diane Flores, Todd Reyes, Nina Cruz, Isabel Vargas, and 11 others, a mix of former employees, passengers, and independent advocates. And she said, "The gate agent did not stop me because she hated me. She stopped me because for 14 years no one had ever made it cost anything to look at a person and decide they didn't belong. We're changing what that costs. not through anger, not through punishment alone, through structure, through memory, through the simple, non-negotiable decision that dignity is not a reward for looking the right way or carrying the right bag. It's the floor. It was always supposed to be the floor. Our job now is to make sure everyone knows it. The room gave her a long, quiet moment before anyone started to applaud. It was the kind of silence that means something was true. I want to be honest with you about why this story stayed with me. It's not the reveal. It's not the boardroom scene, or the legal consequences, or the numbers that followed. Those parts of the story are satisfying in the way that justice is always satisfying when it finally arrives. But the part that I keep thinking about is the moment at the podium when Zara Okafor simply didn't move. She didn't perform her credentials. She didn't beg. She didn't try to make Claudia understand. She just stood still and let the truth accumulate around her, trusting that it would eventually be impossible to ignore. That is not a skill you can fake. That is something you build in yourself over years of being in that position and deciding each time that you're still going to stand. What I also want you to notice is Todd Reyes. He's not the headline of this story. He didn't get the viral moment. But Todd reached for that scanner twice and was stopped twice, and he still told the truth when it mattered, even when the man above him was watching. People like Todd exist in every situation like this one. They're not yet powerful enough to stop what's happening. But they remember. They document. They wait for the moment when telling the truth stops being dangerous. Claudia had 11 complaints filed against her over 6 years. Someone filed each one of those. That someone was a Todd. And the fact that nothing happened until Zara Okafor stood still at that podium tells you everything about what happens when we only protect accountability for the people who already have power. The Todds of the world deserve better than that. So do the people who filed those complaints. If this story gave you something, a memory, a feeling of recognition, or just the reminder that standing still in a hard moment is one of the bravest things a person can do, share it with someone who needs to hear it today. Subscribe if you want more stories like this one. And if you've been in that line, if you've had that look given to you and didn't know what to do, I want you to know that your experience is real. It matters, and it belongs in the conversation. Leave a comment below. I read every single one. Thank you for being here. This story is fictional and created for inspirational and entertainment purposes. All characters, names, events, and organizations depicted are entirely fictional and do not represent any real persons or entities.